that kind of pushed 40 into the limelight. Hey folks, welcome back to Bullets and Brass. Today we are talking about 40 Smith & Wesson. This is a caliber that had a great start and kind of has died out. And there's a reason for it. It is not because it's a bad caliber, it's a caliber that doesn't really have a role to play anymore in common use. And we're going to talk about why it was so popular when it started and why these days it's kind of a weird choice. Why it doesn't really have a role to play in the market it was intended for, which is key because personal use, there's nothing wrong with it. But it was designed to fill a certain niche. First, a little quick history. And if you're familiar with 40 at all, other than just using it, you know this. The 40 came about from the FBI wanting to improve what they were using. And really, they were testing other calibers. But John Hall, one of the FBI agents involved in the testing, said, hey, I'll bring a 10 millimeter and some loaded ammo, some hand-loaded ammo at a reduced pressure that is going to be more in line with what we're testing, because 10 millimeter was not in the discussion. They knew that it was too much. So he did. He brought it in, and what they found was he was right. If you're trying to have a universal firearm for a wide variety of agents, that grip size becomes an issue. Female agents, smaller men, that grip is an issue. I mean, even for me, a double stack 45, very often that grip is too large to be good. I can shoot it, but I am compensating for the grip rather than it being a benefit. And Smith & Wesson was doing testing and figuring this out and realized that, well, if you're downloading 10 millimeter, there's extra room in the case. How about we just shorten the case? And then if we shorten the case, it fits in our 9 millimeter guns. So suddenly you can get all the things you wanted. You can get power, you can get penetration, you can get grip size, you can get capacity. What's not to like? Because keep in mind, at the time, you are like, because this is mid-80s, you are right before the early 90s revolution in hollow points. The early 90s through early 2000s really represent a period where bullet design, some tweaks to propellants really changed the landscape of self-defense loads. But in the mid-80s, none of that existed. The FBI was literally using semi-wad cutters, okay? Many police departments were. Ball ammo was not uncommon for self-defense. Well, 40 Smith & Wesson was in between, obviously, 9mm and 45, but with most of the advantages of 9 and 45. 40 Smith & Wesson has between 460 and 580 foot-pounds of energy. That is factory loads in 40 Smith & Wesson. But minimum 460, okay, that's key. Your lighter loads are still at 460. We're going to skip over to 9mm, 360 to 501. Massive cut, okay? And when you figure in the reduced performance of the hollow points at the time and the fact that some people weren't even running hollow points, yeah, big difference. 45 ACP was 410, 412 to 592. Probably like 580. The 592 was a bit out there load, but with a bigger, heavier bullet. So your actual effective stopping power is higher than you would think compared to the other two. But 40, you're not that much smaller and you're going significantly faster. That kind of pushed 40 into the limelight for police and self-defense. It didn't take off for self-defense initially, but the police departments all were like, holy cow, You mean we can get a 9mm size? Because remember, they had just done the 1-9 switchover. That was beginning of the 80s. And then they had found that with the bullets we've got, performance is not actually that great. A lot of them looked at 40 and said, hey, that could be the answer to our problems. And then the Gun Control Act in 1994 comes in, and suddenly the rest of us said, I can only have 10 rounds in the magazine if you're buying new. A lot of people had grandfathered in stuff. But I can only buy 10-round magazines. I can buy a single stack 45. I can download a double stack 45, which seems awful stupid. I can have a very downloaded 9mm, but I'm giving up performance. Or there's this new 40 Smith & Wesson that gives me almost the performance of a 45. Keep in mind, you could really get the performance of a 45 if you wanted. But I can get 10 rounds in a normal size gun, in a carry gun. I can get 10 rounds in, or 9 maybe. But then that expired. And we could suddenly have larger magazines again. And bullet development during this time period was drastic. You had a whole sequence of better and better bullets. It just was a thing. And all the ammo got a little faster. Propellants got a little better. They were able to maintain pressure levels and improve performance a little bit. So suddenly, your 9mm in actual in-the-field results, not in a lab, was about as good as you were going to get. If you were comparing to 45 or 40, not 357, but 45 or 40, actual, did the perp stop? Did they, drop their gun and hit the ground, and, was the event stopped? 9mm suddenly starts looking really good. So where that leaves you is you can take the lower recoil, higher capacity, easier to get in a package that everybody can use, 9mm, that does just as well in real world performance. The difference in actual shootings, real world stuff, not testing, between 9mm, 40, and 45 with modern ammo is so small that it's inside it's inside the error rate, basically. Well, to me, that says 40 is no longer its role as that caliber that was in between is gone. Because why would you go higher than 9mm? Now, you could argue that bigger bullet going a little slower, more momentum, and a larger initial hole if you don't get expansion. Great. If you're going to do that, go 45. That is literally, many of us make that choice. And when I lived up north, that was my choice. And it still is now, just because my carry gun of choice is a 1911. But if I was starting fresh, probably 9. The argument very quickly becomes 9mm or 45 again. And for most people, the answer really should be 9. Your heart may say otherwise, and that's perfectly fine. The differences between these are so small that if your answer is 357 Magnum in a revolver, power to you. If your answer is 40, in a 90s Smith & Wesson, go for it. None of that is particularly relevant anymore. Go with what you want. What are the downsides for 40? Why would you not take it? Because if you're carrying a carry gun, the round count is probably not that much different between 9mm and 40. And if they're all roughly equivalent, why wouldn't you take the bigger round? And the answer is recoil. Pretty much everybody who shoots 40 for the first time, if they're a 9mm or a 45 shooter, remarks on the recoil. And it's not that there's a lot of it, it's that it's very sharp, it's very snappy. And the reason for that is simple. You have a gun, a caliber, that is at the same pressure as 9mm. Same pressure, both 35,000 PSI. And a heavier bullet, a larger diameter, heavier bullet. There's no way that doesn't result in sharper, heavier recoil. You just can't avoid it. .45 avoids it because it runs at lower pressure with a much larger diameter bullet going slower. So it generates its power differently, and it is more of a push. It's still a lot of recoil, but it's a push, not a very sharp recoil impulse. With 50% more pressure, 40 Smith & Wesson is harsh. And honestly, I don't like it. A lot of people don't like it. If there's no benefit, if you're not gaining anything, why would you take that? Why would you accept that extra recoil? If you're starting out new, if you are a new shooter looking at calibers, my advice is skip 40. I don't think it has anything to offer in today's market that is worth the trade-offs. That isn't to say it can't do it. That isn't to say it's a bad choice. I just think that 9mm is a better choice. I say this with, pain and heartache because I'm a 45 guy, but 9mm is the appropriate round for almost every person when you're talking a self-defense carry firearm. If you're not carrying it, if you're talking a woods gun, if you're talking a range gun, shoot whatever the hell you want, whatever makes your heart go pitter-patter, right? But if you're talking carry for self-defense, very often the goal is smallest, lightest, it'll get the job done well. That's going to be 9mm. It's not going to be 380 anymore. It's not going to be 40 or 45. It's going to be 9mm. That is it. That is my update on my 40 Smith & Wesson video. I will make sure the old one is linked in this video because I was a sourpuss, tired mofo when I filmed that. It is funny. I just rewatched it before I filmed this, and wow. Anyway, take care, have fun, stay safe, keep shooting.